Well, good morning and welcome back to Mudwalkers. My name is Chris, and today we have an interview, as you've probably seen from the title and the thumbnail. I first came across this person on X, formerly known as Twitter. I like to still say Twitter. If you like to say Twitter still, point that out in the comments, because I think Twitter was a way better name than X, just my own, naked opinion. But came across this person on X and really liked her message and her stance, her perspective. I think she brings a lot to the table in helping people understand naturism. So decided to reach out to her and see if I can get an interview. After I heard an interview she did on someone else's podcast, I heard that interview, decided to reach out to her, and to my surprise, she said yes. So here's the interview. As a man, I've become increasingly aware of my limitations when it comes to expressing women's issues in naturism. So I've been reaching out to women in the naturist movement to try and get their voices on the channel to help me and my subscribers understand more of this from a woman's perspective. Sarah, being an actual woman, can better explain this than I can by far. Both because I haven't experienced it firsthand, and because as a man, there are probably aspects of it that I still really don't understand. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into the interview itself.
Perfect.
Hey everybody, as you can see, we have a guest today, just Sarah, who I met on Twitter. I heard some great interviews, I think it was at least one. I can't remember if I heard you anywhere else, but I definitely heard the one on Love the Skin You're In. Fantastic
Yes.
podcast. If you guys have not heard that podcast, it's a must listen. I haven't heard an episode yet that I didn't love. It's just fantastic. It's great that we're getting more and more
Sorry.
good naturist content these days. I've got three
Interruption.
kids. The only reason that we don't have a whole jungle of noises behind me is that my wife knows I have this interview. My oldest is on a trip to go see family with his nana, and then my two youngest are actually out with my wife right now at her mom's house to give us space for this interview. I am very accustomed to noise, constant noise. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm just Sarah from Twitter. I started on my nudist naturist journey just a few months ago. I was lightly intrigued. Someone had talked to me about it last year, and so I've kind of been on this journey of self discovery for a few years, and really had kind of like stunted in my progress before I was introduced to naturism. And so I was making quite a bit of progress, but I was still struggling to heal from a lot of issues with my body and how I've seen myself. I'd finally grown to accept how other people had seen me, but not necessarily how I see myself. So it was kind of one of those things where I was really searching for that missing piece, and along that discovery process, I met someone who was naturist, and they tried their best to explain naturism and nudism into someone who was raised in a very, very strict religious household in the Bible Belt in Arkansas. It was really hard for me to grasp and wrap my head around. So that's
Yep.
when I dove headfirst into the research side because I'm a big researcher. I have to research everything.
Oh, totally. I told a friend of mine once, I was trying to talk to her about naturism a couple years ago, and she said, before I ever think about trying that, I'm going to have to do some research first. And I said, that's perfect. Great. Research
Yes.
the heck out of it. That's perfect. Exactly the right reaction, although it's got to sound crazy to people on the first mention.
Yes, I think that there's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction of, no, that's not even possible. That's not real. That's not a thing. And I think that's kind of hard for people to really wrap their head around how it's possible in today's society that we live in. And I think it's really important, though, for people to understand that it is not only is it possible, but it's normalized in several places where you can be in a safe and very healing environment. And again, that's really hard for people to grasp and understand. And I was there. Like I completely understand because I was totally there. I was the person that was like, that's not a thing. That's that's not healthy.
Hmm.
And I kind of had that reaction because, nudity is viewed very differently in today's society than it was at one point, or even as it is in other places. So for me, it was a huge struggle to wrap my head around or grasp the concept that it could be a healthy, clean, non-sexual environment. And it was all the way up until the day that I tried it because I just could not fathom how that was possible. And I think especially for women, we're taught we have to dress a certain way and behave a certain way and look a certain way and act a certain way. And that is that's how we're seen by others in society. And that's how we're perceived by others. But also that's the reasoning or the basis behind why things happen to us. And I don't agree with it, and I really struggled with it for a long time, understanding why that was even a concept. But you see men say, "Well, what was she wearing?" Whenever something bad happened, whenever someone was attacked or sexualized, you hear comments like, "Well, you're being too much. You're over the top. You're being dramatic.
You
You're
should smile
overreacting."
more.
Yes, yes, and they're like, "If you would smile, Um, you get a lot of those comments from men that try to, and even other women too, because we repeat and we mimic the behaviors of those around us and the environment that we grow up in. And so us as women, we take on some of those same comments and those same roles without, I think, properly thinking through, the words we're using or the behavior. And that kind of sets a pace for, our children, especially our young girls. And really really unpacking that and kind of undoing some of that damage it's very, very important.
Yeah.
But I think it starts with each of us individually, and I think broadening our horizons and really looking at the different dynamics of social nudism and naturism has really made a huge impact on how I see those things and how I handle those comments, because we do get them on a regular basis. And I don't think it's okay, but at the same time, it's how do you deal with that? It's a huge question amongst women, I know, because we've had these conversations, these tougher conversations amongst my friends groups from the past few months. And I've even heard some of them make those same kind of comments. And I'm like, well, let's think about that for a moment. Like, let's unpack that. And I think drawing attention to those comments when they are made or those things that are said when it happens is really important because it can really help us unravel and undo those toxic behaviors that we've kind of grown accustomed to hearing and perpetrating ourselves.
Yeah. I like the phrase you used, broadening your horizons, and then you said, let's unpack that. That's critical thinking, like you said, it's research, and a lot of people just don't seem willing to do that. I don't know if that's always been the case, or if it's a recent development in human history, or if it's an American thing. I don't know, but people just generally don't seem willing to think critically about this kind of stuff. So you mentioned about the things that you ended up in your mindset as you were going through life. So what was this like for a little Sarah when you were a kid? Like what was your, I guess, childhood like with all of this, like clothing and modesty and nakedness and your body, and like how was that for you?
Well, I was never really exposed at any age, at any stage, until I was grown to any kind of nudity. I don't remember ever seeing someone else in my household even in their underwear. Me and my sister were a year and a half apart, and we grew up extremely close. We never minded changing in front of each other, but I can't remember of anyone else that I was allowed to, or it was normal or okay to change in front of, or be naked in front of. And I think that kind of really impacted me from a young age because the only naked bodies I seen were art, and I was an artist from like very, very young. I love to sketch, I love to draw, I love to create. I was very artistic, and that was kind of my outlet. So seeing the naked form never bothered me, but it seemed to bother everyone around me. If I drew someone who was naked or topless or anything like that, I mean, there was lots of scolding and put some clothes on her.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of the census throughout most of my childhood. We were, you know, we were taught that, ankles and wrists need to.
Oh, just lost your video and audio. We can edit all this boring stuff
Okay.
out for there we go.
There we
The
are.
side of content people never see. Okay,
That's all
so
right.
there was a whole thing with like wrists and ankles. That was the last part I remember.
Yes. So we were taught to dress very modestly, and that was a direct reflection of who you were, what you wanted. Um, ankles were covered, wrists were covered, collarbones were covered. I remember them. I was in a church service at one point because we were involved in a religion that was very, very, very strict. And they believed that the color of your pantyhose was a direct reflection of what you were looking for. Um,
I find
from
that sadly believable.
it, the I got pointed out actually in a church service and individually in a church of a few hundred people, because my high heels were considered to be asking for attention or seeking attention. Um, and I was corrected that I needed to wear shorter high heels. And I was not very fond of that ideology or theory, and I questioned it drastically to the person who had preached the sermon, and it pointed me out in front of the entire congregation. And so it was things like that that were it was an entire culture that the way you look or the way you appear or the littlest things like the height of your high heels were directly reflective on who you are as a person and what you wanted, from people of the opposite sex, or what you wanted from an individual, who you were as a person. Which high heels, as we all know, high heels do not determine who you are as a person. um, the kind of clothes you wear do not determine who you are as a person. You do. And I think that whenever I started on this journey, I was still very much so, thinking along the same lines that who I was as a person directly reflected on what I wore or the shoes I put on. And I didn't wear high heels for several years afterwards, because of the comments and because of being pointed out like that. I guess you call it bullying. Um, and it made a huge impact, but our words do make an impact on others. The
Definitely.
way we see ourselves should be most important. Sometimes that's hard to betray with clothing. I have a very free, open-minded, kind of a hippie soul. So, but just because I wore yoga pants and a tank top to the gym doesn't mean that I just don't have that same soul. And so it it was very odd to me to feel one way and be a person that you are, but not have people understand that,
Yeah.
um, and be judged so harshly based on that. And I think that growing up in a strict religious household, um, the way I the way I was, it was difficult because I was very judgmental of myself because that's what I seen on a continuous basis. If your hair wasn't a certain length, you were judged. If it was too long, then you were judged. If you wore your hair a certain way, then you were being promiscuous. If you didn't wear your hair a certain way, you were not cool enough to be in the in crowd or in the cliques. And it was a continuous there was continuous issues. I felt very out of place. And whenever I had my first son at 17, I was outcast, shamed a lot. I was told that, I wasn't worthy in a lot of ways, a lot of different ways. And it's not true. But in your mind, whenever you grow up with those same kind of patterns, you want to believe the people around you, you want to believe the people in authority over you. Um, and so you do take on those roles. It affects you greatly. And I was very self-conscious of my body in so many ways because I'd watched all the women growing up in my life be very self-conscious and criticize themselves continuously. um, and then I watched men do the same thing to the women. So it was just a big cycle of toxicity.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
now, yes, and as we all know, it takes not only having that aha moment or those moments of growth and healing to undo those things, but it takes recognizing that they are toxic and figuring out what to do next and how to overcome those things and how to, really heal from those patterns of toxic abuse, really. I mean, whether you're abusing yourself with the way you see yourself or whether other people are doing that for you, it's hard. And I think that after many years of struggling, um, I finally recognized that I was in this cycle of not caring or loving myself or accepting my body or who I was. And so that took some time. Um, and then I really started having to put myself in front of the mirror and spending time just looking at who I was, because you change over the years, you change, with having children, you change with growth and you're never the same person for very long. So recognizing who I am now and really growing to love and accept exactly as I am for who I am, it took time and a lot of reflection. And I think that I've made more progress and more growth with that process since I started practicing naturism than I have in years and years. The growth was just drastic. And I think it took me seeing how other people seen me completely naked of everything, not just clothing, but just in a complete state of vulnerability. Um, and it took me seeing other people love and accept and care about me for exactly who I was in that moment, to really find that for myself.
That's beautiful. So we talked about how strict your life was before, and to a lot of people, this would sound like the very last thing that anyone would ever expect Sarah to end up with. So you mentioned that a friend mentioned something to you, and there was some research. So what was the path like from super strict, toxic, self-conscious to let's get naked at a campground with a bunch of other people? Like where was the in between there? What was the process like?
Well, I did lots of research. I listened to every episode of every podcast I could get my hands on.
I've
I
been to
spent
the Matrix
months.
Living show when I got started.
Yes, yes, yes. I listened to every episode of Love the Skin You're In podcast. I listened to every episode of, I think it's Naturist, Nudists, and um,
Naked nudists and naturists.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I listened. I'm talking everything that I could possibly find. I read so many articles on Anner. I joined Anner before I ever went to a resort. Like I was, I was so I was so worried. I was so anxious. I was so stressed that I was trying to relieve those those fears, because I knew that that was mostly just me. I was just it was my own struggles, which I know that others go through that same process, but I was trying to relieve those fears for myself. I did research on, you know, any negative things I could find. I was like, what actually happens? Where are the negative comments? Where are the negative experiences? I want to hear those too, just to know what to prepare for. And I couldn't really find very many, if any. I started a Twitter account because I was like, I have to talk about this. I have to air out all these stresses. And I started writing on Twitter. I had no clue where to start, where to end, where the middle was, but I just started writing. I had to write about my anxiety, my angst about all of this, and try to find other women in naturism, because that's what I struggled with the most is finding other women my age, other moms. It was very difficult. I couldn't find hardly any. The women I did find in naturism were so supportive. I reached out to Bill and Nisi before my first visit to Oak Lake Trails, to talk to them just about the fears and the stresses and kind of um, get some relief from the anxiety that was building.
Yeah.
And, that was really important too, because like finding your community, finding those people that you can connect with, and knowing that someone's going to be there when you get there, it was very important because I went alone. And so most people are like, why would you do
Yeah.
that? But for me, I felt like I didn't want to use anyone else as a crutch. I didn't want to, use any kind of distractions. I wanted to face my fear head on, and that's how I face most of my fears. But I wanted to face it head on, and I wanted to do it on my own terms and my own pace, and not have any other stressors. And they're like, "Well, going alone isn't that enough?" Like it is,
Hmm.
but I wanted to prove to myself that like I was okay and that I could do this. Um, Even though it seems like a big jump or a big leap for most people, it was what made sense for me. And I just did it. And it was a 6 hour drive, and the
I
whole
didn't realize
six
it was
hours.
that far.
Yes, yes. So the whole 6 hours, I was teetering back and forth, like, I can do this, I can't do this, I can do this, I can't do this. And whenever I would just get really anxious, I'd pick up the phone and call a friend, or call Bill or Niecy and be like, listen, like, I gotta go home.
Why am I doing
And
this?
yes, what am I doing? But once I got there, I still was very anxious. I was shaking like an absolute leaf. Like I was so nervous. I think my brain was telling me like, this is dangerous. What are you doing? And then my common sense is saying, no, you're fine. Like history proves itself otherwise. So it
It's
was
like a
it was
diving
going
board. As a kid, you get on a diving board and your brain's telling you, like, I'm okay, like, we're okay, just jump. And then the rest of your body's going, no, don't move. So,
yeah.
yeah.
This is dangerous. Don't do it. So yeah, it's kind of like that knee jerk reaction in your brain that tells you like, no, this is a bad idea. This is dangerous. This is it, and it's not. And I proved myself that it was not dangerous, but it was getting past that initial fear factor. And actually, right after I got into the office, Bill was the first person to meet me, and he said hi, and we got into the office, and I'm fully clothed, and I'm holding on this clipboard like it's a weapon, just. And they asked me to fill it out, and I was just like, I can't write. Like, what are you talking
Mhm.
about? I can barely stand.
One letter
Uh,
per minute.
right, yes. And in walks our incoming president of Anner, Linda Weber.
Weber.
And yes. And so when she walked in, I was like, I recognize her, but I couldn't remember from where. And so she walks up and introduces herself, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I follow you on Twitter. Like, I'm so excited that you're here."
That's cool.
Yeah, and then I met Naked Nate on Twitter as well, because he runs the resort there at Oak Lake Trails, and so I got to meet some great people like fresh out of the gate. We went on a tour, and I got settled in, and I sat in my tent for like 2 hours, and
Hmm.
I was like, I can't do it. I can't. And so I called a friend of mine, and we sat and talked for a bit until I calmed down, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Like I can do this. And
Yeah.
so I got out, and like I wandered around, explored. I went swimming, I did classes, and went on trail walks, and we did all the things that weekend, and I had such an amazing time. Like best first visit to a naturist resort ever. Like
Awesome.
could not ask for better.
So you took your clothes off in the tent and then you got out? Is that how it
Yes.
worked? Okay, so
Yes.
that had to be a whole experience, unzipping the tent and just stepping right out like that.
Yes.
A lot
It
better than
was.
undressing outside the tent, I'm sure.
Yes. Well, it was actually kind of funny because I got in the tent, I stripped down, and I literally sat there like completely naked for so long. And I thought, I can't do it. Like, I can't walk out there. I don't know what to do. I don't know. Why am I scared? Like everyone else is naked. Like, you're the only one that looks awkward, Sarah.
Yeah.
And so when I actually stepped out of my tent, someone recognized me and approached, and they were like, hey, like I seen your journey on Twitter, like I'm so excited for you to be here. And they were visiting for the weekend too, and so I was just like, oh, hi. Like, and it didn't like feel awkward or weird. There was like, it was odd, it felt natural.
Yeah.
And I went to the pool right after that and got in the pool for a little bit, and it wasn't really hot. outside, so not a lot of people were at the pool at that point. So I was able to kind of collect myself and like kind of have a moment to my own to just
Didn't have to
adapt.
walk right up to a whole crowd.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that afternoon we had a dance, and I was very anxious about the dance. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna be there, but like I just don't know what to do. It felt awkward, and so um, I wasn't sure how it would go. Like, what do you do in a naked dance? Like,
Hmm.
like, yeah. So, and it was great. Like, we all like danced. There was a bunch of music. There was plenty of, you know, people socializing and hanging out, and it was normal and natural. Like, it wasn't any different than anywhere else I've been. Actually, it was. There was a lot better boundaries, a lot more better physical boundaries.
Yeah.
No one tried to walk up and like hit on me or ask me out or ask for my phone number. Just those awkward situations that you usually get outside of nature resorts. I didn't have to deal with any of that. I never felt threatened in any way. I never felt like someone was going to invade my space or privacy. And so it was just like everywhere else, but it wasn't. It was better, a
It
lot
was
better.
better.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's one of the things that it's difficult for me to explain to non-naturists is it is very natural. It's easy to just have conversations and meet people.
it is.
That people generally speaking don't make it weird. And the kinds of ways people make stuff weird in naturism is the same way you'd expect people to make conversations weird outside of naturism. The
Yeah.
weird experiences, weird conversations that I've had with creepy guys at naturist resorts is just that they start talking weird, and I get uncomfortable, and I end the conversation, walk away, and that's the level of discomfort that you end up with in the event you have a bad experience, usually. So it's good to hear you had such a great day. So it sounds like there was like nervous in the tent, and then you just walked out of the tent, and it was all great. Was there any kind of like transition with like nerves, or was it like super gradual?
No, no, it was kind of odd because after I got out of the tent and I started socializing, going to do things with strangers I've never met. So that was crazy. But like I hate to say there was nothing. I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt threatened in any way. I never felt like something was wrong or bad or I never felt that after that initial moment. So after I got past that first those first nerves and fear of what's going to happen or what's coming next, it kind of dissipated, and there wasn't really much of a gradual transition. It just kind of happened all at once. And um, from that first time, I've gone to one resort two more times, and I've gone to another resort once, and I absolutely love it. Like the freedom that it gives you, but also like the security for women. I feel comfortable going to a naturist resort alone, where I barely feel comfortable going into Walmart alone.
Hmm.
Um, and you have a different sense of vulnerability when you're nude, yes, but at the same time, I feel more safe, more secure, and more heard in a naturist environment than I have ever felt anywhere
In
in the
that
real world.
place with those people. They're great
Yes,
people.
yes, amazing people, some of the best people I've ever met in my life,
Yeah.
and that's coming from someone who was raised in a strict religious background. That I meet a lot of different people, and so um, I know a great deal of people, and that it still doesn't trump the people I've met in naturism.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
So you were pretty nervous driving to Oak Lake Trails. What was the emotional experience like driving back from Oak Lake Trails?
So it was kind of like an internal struggle. And a lot of people are like, did you miss it when you leave, or were you disappointed you had to put your clothes back on? I hear a lot of those responses, which are very accurate, but um, when you've spent your 30 plus years, 33 years at that point, in clothing 100% of the time, it wasn't necessarily uncomfortable to get back in my clothing. But it was very, I hate to say uncomfortable to sit in those emotions of
Hmm.
confusion. So, everything that you were raised to believe was this is dangerous, this is wrong, this is bad, this is sexual, this is deviant, this is, you know, they use certain words to describe those things, and then you experience something and it's the complete opposite. And so internally you're like, this doesn't make sense.
Total
And
paradigm shift.
so, do what?
It's a total paradigm shift, sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so then you're questioning, like, okay, what else, what other things do I have wrong? What other things do I need to reconsider, rethink, reevaluate going forward? And so it was one of those moments that I spent the ride back thinking about, like, okay, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about that? Questioning things that I was raised to believe or understand. Are those things accurate? And what what things what it's hard, it's so hard to explain in words, but what things do I need to unpack? What changes do I need to make to better reflect who I am as a person, and how I feel about myself and my environment going forward? So I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of self-reflecting, not only just my behavior, but the way I see things, people, places, and it's changed drastically.
Yeah. That deeper thought, again, the critical thinking, not just coming to this, but coming from this, is really cool. It reminds me of my experience getting into naturism years ago, back in 2012. But when I figured out that what I had been taught in church my whole life about this issue had been completely the opposite, essentially, of reality, I went back to the Bible and I said, okay, well, what else is there that I've been believing wrong about my whole life and doing wrong? Like, and that's been my journey ever since then. So for like 12 years now, I've been trying to figure out all the other stuff. I doubt I'm going to find everything, but it's been very interesting and I like where it's bringing me. But a lot of the stuffy church people that I know don't like where I'm going. It makes sense historically, culturally, etc. And scripturally, it makes sense as well. The changes that I've been making, but it just doesn't fit in very well with American culture, especially 20th century American culture. So I'm not making a lot of friends with this. I'm making some friends, but by and large, locally, it's not very well received. So
I'm,
mhm,
I'm sorry. I believe that culturally, local culture, I've had a lot more patience with people and sat down, and whenever they do hear naturism or nudism, they kind of have a knee-jerk reaction of, oh no, that's bad. um, and you kind of have to be more patient, and be ready for those explanations that it's not sexual in nature, it has nothing to do with actually being nude, that's just a tool. And I think that the more I have better explained it, and kind of my own experiences, the better people are able to understand and process and like digest where you're coming from. And some people don't, and they disagree, and that's okay, because we don't. It takes people of all different cultures, backgrounds, and likes, wants, needs to make the world go round. So it's okay if we're not all on the same page, as long as we respect each other's decisions.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling friends a lot lately is I'm not that invested in getting everyone to practice naturism as much as I am trying to get everybody to get along.
Yeah, yeah. I think understanding what naturism is, the comprehension of it, and respecting that other people enjoy and find healing, purpose in themselves in naturism, just like people who practice any other kind of faith, religion, or social aspect. Like, I don't necessarily like golf, but I respect others who like to go to the golf course and play
Yeah.
golf. I don't have a disrespect of people who are, Baptist or Catholic, but I'm going to show you the same level of respect, and I expect that same respect in return. And I think that's kind of a hard thing, because if you take in the factors that we're taught, that nudity and being naked in front of others, especially of the opposite sex, is wrong, dirty, or sexual, then we kind of have that knee jerk reaction to it, and you're like, whoa, what do you mean? What is that? Why are you doing that? That's wrong. And I think instead of doing that and slowly processing like what it is and taking time to understand it, educate ourselves and others is going to be key in helping, you know, others in society understand.
Totally.
Yeah.
So people locally, sounds like you're having some good conversations. What does your family think about this kind of stuff? Extended family, mom, dad, sisters, brothers, if people know?
I do not mind to talk about naturism with family. I've kept it pretty light. My parents both know that, I'm trying and doing things in naturism. My mother actually found my Twitter account, and my first reaction was, "Mom, get off my Twitter."
Hmm.
And and I told her, I was like, "Well, I mean, I don't mind if you're on my Twitter, but please be prepared for what you
Yeah.
might see, considering that that was the religion, the culture that she chose to raise me in. So I understand if she still feels the same way along the lines of, her beliefs.
It
And
sounds like
so,
you're looking out for her.
yes, of course, yes. And so I understand if she doesn't understand it, but but I'm like, prepare yourself, please. Um, I openly have discussed it with some of my siblings, and I don't mind whether or not they agree or would want to try something like that is completely up to them. I respect their decision just like I do everyone else's, but I also don't try to hide things. And so, as everyone can tell, I'm openly on Twitter and I post quite regularly. So, to those aspects, it's so with family, it's been kind of a different dynamic to explain and for them to understand, but it's something I'll again have patience with and slowly educate. And whether or not they accept that part of me is completely up to them. That's perfectly fine. They haven't been critical or condemning or too harsh, but teach their own. I respect their decisions, and usually they respect mine. So that's been it's been a relief in some ways, just because I didn't expect um, to receive a warmer welcome from my family on these kind of subjects. But I know that they have different views on things, and I completely respect that.
Yeah. You're having the good conversations and people coming just to a mutual understanding, not even mutual understanding like we understand it as in we agree on it, but just we
Yes,
understand each other. I hear
yes,
about some naturists, and this used to be me when I first got into naturism. I would try to get everybody to come and try it out because it was, so amazing. But that ended up turning a lot of people off. And I learned the hard way what you seem to have just picked up on intuitively, which is awesome. But I learned the hard way to just let people come to their own conclusions, make their own decisions, and it's just all going to be it's going to be okay in the end.
yeah. I try to allow people the space and freedom to ask me questions as they're curious and as they want to know things. And sometimes they're harsh questions, they're judgmental questions. And as those questions come about, and as I'm feeling the harsh, judgmental approach with them, I will point that out and be like, well, that feels a little judgy in nature. I don't mind to answer the question, but just keep in mind that this is a platform or a place where this conversation can be held, and we can both be comfortable sharing and discussing,
Hmm.
but it can't come from a place of judgment and harsh reality. So that for some people can kind of, I hate to say put the attitude aside, but it can kind of help them be a little bit more open minded. That saying, "Hey, I understand that you might not have the same views or you might have questions, but let's make sure this is a neutral platform, whether it's having an in person conversation, a social conversation, an online conversation. This is a mutual platform the way we can both share and talk freely without harsh judgment." And so that definitely helps kind of change the change the dynamic a little bit
Yeah.
during your conversation to where people are a little bit more open and a little bit more honest and a little bit more forthcoming with the discussion.
Yeah. I had a really rough conversation with somebody the other day, and at near the end of the conversation, I pointed out to him, "You seem angry." And he was great after that. And it's interesting. You mentioned that just mentioning, hey, that sounds a little bit judgy. We can have a great conversation here. Let's shoot for that. And it sounds like that's doing wonders for these conversations. It's really interesting the way that that works. You don't have to shy away from what the other person is feeling. You can actually just address it directly, gently, kindly, with love, peaceably address it. Hey, seems like this is kind of what is going on right here, and it's very interesting because I've been wondering about making that a broader tactic sounds bad, but a broader method in conversation is kind of gently pointing those things out, not for me to be critical, but for me to let people know that I notice. And it's interesting that
Yes.
this seems to be kind of going on with you as well, and that's encouraging. I'll have to try that in more conversations and see how it goes. So,
Okay.
you ready?
Perfect.
Good.
Ready.
Cool.
Ready when
So,
you are.
the two-part question is like the physical versus the emotional experience of naturism.
Maybe.
Uh, I'll pretend I don't have a cheat sheet. Okay. How would you describe the physical experience of naturism versus the emotional experience of naturism? And we've touched on it a little bit with like the social dynamics and stuff like that, but like what is it like physically versus emotionally?
I think the physical aspect of experiencing naturism is so complex to explain in words because it's you have a very physical reaction to emotion. So they're deeply entwined, but the physical aspect, you the feeling internally is just not it's not comparable. Um, you're talking about getting a lot of sunshine. You're talking about like a better sense of comfort. You're talking about the connection that you have with not only just everything in nature, but with yourself. And the physical feeling is exceptional. I mean, you don't have those. One of the things I thought was so odd is I get a lot of questions or a lot of comments about, oh my gosh, a lot of naked people. There must be a lot of odor. There must be a lot of it's weird smells and they people go on talking like that kind of stuff and I have never noticed it in naturism, even with myself. Like I don't deal with those kind of things, and I think a lot of it has to do with the clothes we wear and the detergents and the mixtures of chemicals with your body's natural state, which everyone knows does not mix very well. And I think it does create like more odor and more issues with a lot of people call it hygiene, but in all honesty, yeah, I didn't have to do a whole lot to smell perfectly normal and natural
Yeah.
when I was in my.
I know. The interview is going so well, but it's time for the Patreon shout out. This episode of Mudwalkers is brought to you by Patreon. These guys are my patrons. They're making the channel happen. They're keeping my work sustainable. So guys, my patrons, can't thank you enough for everything you're doing on Patreon. If you'd like to support what I do, there's a Patreon link in the description down under this video. There'll also be a link here on screen shortly. There are several different tiers, different levels you can subscribe to on the Patreon. At the lowest level and up, all the levels get early access to all my mainline content, videos like this one. At the next lowest, the second lowest, you get access to not only all of the mainline content, early access, that's the supporter level. Then at the Mudwalker level, you get access to all my other Patreon content, which is stuff like cooking videos, travel vlogs, personal stuff, behind the scenes stuff. That shows up on Patreon at the Mudwalker level and above. Starting at the Mudwalker level, you also get access to our monthly Zoom call, which is a fantastic time for us to hang out and swap stories and share ideas and just in general have a good time and spend time together. It just seems like the Zoom calls are getting better and better as we go, which doesn't seem possible. It always seems like the Zoom call is like, wow, this is like as good as it gets, right? And then no, it just keeps on getting better somehow. So I love the Zoom calls. It's a fantastic part of having Patreon, my favorite part actually. And Patreon really is making the channel happen. I'm doing things this year that I could not have done without your support. And if you'd like to carry naturism forward and make this more mainstream, if you want us to be able to make this more accepted in the culture, that's what I'm all about here on Mudwalkers. So if you want to see that happen, by all means, please support me and other naturist content creators as we work on that goal together. But at this point, if I went on, I'll be rambling, so let's get back into the video.
So you were talking about how it didn't take a lot for you to, I guess, smell normal.
Yes. Yeah. I went in. We took basic showers in the outdoor showers, and I never noticed it, and it was it was odd to me because I thought, usually I'm very self-conscious about smelling good, and like most women are,
Yeah,
and making sure our hygiene's kept up, and things like that. And I didn't have to deal with any of that, and it was kind of it wasn't even a thought until after the fact. And I'm just like, I don't even think I've put on deodorant in 3 days, and I smell perfectly fine.
yeah,
It was kind of one of those things like, that's odd. But I think that our bodies just, between all the chemicals that we place on our body, all the detergents and the things in our clothes and the things in all the body washes and the deodorants, and we've proven time and time again that there's a lot of toxic chemicals in the things that we do
oh,
and the foods
totally.
that we eat. And so when you don't add in those extra elements, like, what does your body naturally smell like? What do you naturally have to deal with? And it was so drastic, the change, but also, like, with cleanliness and hygiene, like, it was not a big deal. It was second nature. It wasn't something you had to really deal with a whole lot. And so that it was very refreshing because I'm definitely not used to that.
Yeah.
Usually, you got to get a shower. We live in Arkansas. It's really hot. I thought, you're going to be sweaty a lot because you're outdoors a lot, these naturist resorts. And I was doing things like sports and being in the water quite a bit and doing yoga and things like that. I didn't find myself having to rush and go get a shower or refresh and deodorant and things like that, which again, it sounds crazy, but
Hmm.
that's how it was. Like, we didn't really have to worry about that too much. And I'm very smell sensitive. I am so smell sensitive. So, like, I have a heightened sense of smell, and I can smell things a mile away. And so
So
for
the
me
fact
to
that it
say
didn't bother
that,
you,
yes, it was not an issue. And I thought it was really unique because I expected it to be the complete opposite. In fact, I had read on a comment section on um, one of the main media outlets had posted about the big nude boat for next year,
hmm
and it kind of went viral. And one of the common questions was, one of the common comments was, I would hate to smell that boat. Yeah, they were making lots of jokes about, the smell of all those naked people. And I was just like, no, it's actually the complete opposite. It was kind of odd just to hear that.
it reminds me of like I'm a big barefooter. When I went out and set those hog snares this morning, didn't have shoes on. I was going through the
Love
mud, the
that.
sand, the rocks, everything. And people say, "Oh, you're a barefooter, so you must have really stinky feet all the time. Must all the smell." My feet smell like my hands because they're
Yeah.
dry and they get airflow. If you keep your body dry and have clean air on your body will all
Mhm.
smell like your hands and face.
Yes.
And I remember reading a bunch of articles about, the benefits of sleeping naked, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of it had to do with airflow. I remember one day a couple years ago, I got a really bad body odor under my shirt. And I took my shirt off and I laid out in the backyard with my arms up over my head. And in a few minutes, the odor under my arms went away.
Yeah.
There's something to, like you're saying, just letting our bodies do their natural thing that it no, it's not going to take care of all your underarm odor, okay? But like you still
Yeah.
need to take a shower. But it does a lot, and people underestimate the power of the clothes and chemicals and things with that smell.
Yep. And I think that I'd really love to see some research projects on it because it really baffled me. I'm a big researcher. I love all things research material related, as you
Yeah.
can tell. But yeah,
I think
I
people
think
should study naturism on a scientific level much more than they are.
absolutely.
But there's a huge funding problem with it because the moment some old dude in a lab coat tells his guys, I think we should study all the naked people, all the other guys go, creep. And
Yeah, they're like,
oh,
something wrong with
so they
that
struggle to get
one.
funding, but the more normal we can make it in society, the less that assumption will come up. That's part of the reason why I have mud walkers, and that's part of the reason why I'm so grateful that you've got Just Naked Sarah on Twitter. Like we can make this more known. We don't need people to we don't need there to be more naturists even. It just needs to be better understood by the public. And once we
Yes.
have that, maybe we can get more of this research going, which would be awesome.
Absolutely. And I think that because of the nude aspect alone, that naturists, nudists, they have a very odd reaction to everyone in the public. There's a lot of discrimination. And they believe that it's, a highly sexual, disturbing practice. And I think has to do with the level of material and education that's being, displayed to the public. But also it's B, there's a big, sexual component to every aspect of our lives, in the textile world. And because there's such a massive sexual component, they can't even understand that there is a non-sexual form of nudity. So
Yeah.
I think really debunking and stressing the fact that this is not sexual in nature, and being heard by the general public, it'll really kind of help educate others, because the discrimination that naturists face in general is quite drastic, whether it be in the legal system or just on social media. Like it's quite drastic.
It's a big problem.
And yes, it's a big problem. And I don't think that discrimination on any level is okay. And I don't think I've ever discriminated against those who are, of the LGBTQ community. And I think that our rights as naturists and nudists should be protected as other minorities and groups that are not very heard in the community.
Absolutely. I've been saying for a while that I think this is a human right. I don't think it's a human mandate. But I mean, if it's legal to wear a sleeveless shirt in public because it's my human right to have my arms out, it just seems like the natural extension of that is that it goes to the rest of it. Now, the conduct, I know you agree with this, but your conduct should still be limited by law. Just because someone has the right to take his pants off out in public doesn't mean he has the right to put certain orifices on the windows.
Yes.
People should still have a standard of conduct, but that has nothing to do with what clothes you're wearing and everything to do with what you do.
Yes. And that a friend of mine the other day asked me about like our behavior as naturists and nudist resorts. And she asked if it ever got inappropriate or anyone ever crossed lines, because I think she was curious on trying it herself. But she's also very protective of her personal space. She does not like to be touched by strangers, and that's an anxiety. Yes, and that's an anxiety for her just in general, just to go to Walmart or Target or socialize at family gatherings, and so she struggles with that. And I told her, I said, I have never in my life had my personal boundaries more respected than in a naturist resort, ever, anywhere. And I never once had to tell someone to, give me personal space or to get out of my bubble. And for someone who has faced and gone through quite a bit of extensive abuse and not having your personal space respected, especially by people of the opposite sex, it's been very, very difficult for me to get past those mental blockades of walking into a naturist resort and trusting men and women equally. And because I haven't had that experience in my life and growing up, and I could tell story after story on how that's true, but sitting down and having that conversation with her and like, hey, this is my personal experience with it. Like I had the same issues, I had the same problems. And explaining that to her like really helped her understand that there are places where you can go and your boundaries are respected. If you do not want to be hugged or touched there, it's very, very, very consensual, even on the most basic non-sexual way. Do you mind if I give you a hug? Or, hey, do you need a hug? Like the communication is so much better. And it betrays a much more consensual, healthy habits in those that do practice naturism in the outside world, because all of that spills over into the rest of your life. And the children that are in nature, grown in naturism, and they grow up with those same boundaries, those same beliefs, and those same respect of boundaries, both personal and otherwise. They grow up to be much more rounded, much more healthy, individuals that know how to communicate wants, needs, and boundaries. And so I've watched it in kids who grew up or said they, talked to adults that said they grew up in naturism and they never even recognized that they have those attributes until they see others that don't,
Mm.
or others that struggle with them. And to communicate clearly, like something that's going on just as basic as like health needs or, body changes or, there's so many healthy aspects. It's almost unbelievable to sit here and list all of
Yeah.
them would be all day long.
And we don't even
And
understand all of them yet.
yeah, I don't. I feel like I'm just starting to unpack the basics of what I'm comprehending and the knowledge that I'm absorbing from the practices itself. And on just a ground level, it's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable.
So you
On a
mentioned,
mental,
Mhm.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, we're interviewing you. If you wanted to say something, go for it.
So like on the mental health aspect, because mental health in America as a whole is just on a huge in decline. It's been on a decline for quite some time. I think it's talked about more and it's understood more now than it's ever been before. But it's still declining. And I don't think necessarily knowledge of what's going on is fixing the problem on a large scale. And to see where my mental health and the things that I struggled with for years and years and years, how far that I've come in the past few months is shocking to say the very least. Um, I never expected it to affect my mental health in such a way as it has, and it helped me create better boundaries in life, just with people, with certain situations and aspects um, that I never expected it. I never expected it to take such a drastic incline in my mental health. To see the improvement of such a short span of time is honestly, it was unbelievable. I
Yeah.
never expected to feel this much and to go through so many emotional roller coasters and healing through the simple fact of taking your clothes off around people. Like it never processed that you could take your clothes off in front of a group of people and do things and interact with them, and then all of a sudden you're the things that took years and years and years to have so much damage go on, and then you're reversing them in
Yeah.
days
The
of
toxicity
practicing.
starts to unravel. It starts to just fall away. And no one really seems to understand how or why that happens. At least the people I've spoken to don't seem to understand it very well. That's one of the things that needs to be studied in naturism is naturism and mental health, because I've heard this over and over and over again across the
Yes.
board that naturism does wonders for people's mental health. It doesn't mean that you're going to have some kind of cure-all for every single mental problem that you
Yes.
have. But the fact that there is marked, noticeable improvement in so many ways for so many people, that's significant.
Yeah, it's drastic. I think that seeing different people at different aspects and different walks of life and at different stages, practicing naturism and seeing such an improvement in their mental health is enough. Uh, it's enough to really spark interest with a lot of different people. And I think that with the issues that we're facing now, in the mental health crisis that we've been in for quite some time, it it should be looked at. It should be researched. People should be taking, account of what's going on in naturism compared to where people are at mentally as a national whole. I mean, we are all struggling, and I don't know of very many people who aren't struggling in one way or the other. And for us to be able to say, here is another tool in that toolbox to help you with your mental health and to help you progress through things or help you heal from things. Um, I think I don't know if you could put a price on that. And
Yeah.
nudity is a simple tool in naturism. It's not what it's all about. And so if we can give people the tools to better themselves and heal from things and see changes in their lives, then why would you not?
Yeah. I like that saying that it's not ultimately about the nudity itself. I feel like naturism is so much more about all this other stuff that we've been talking about, this personal, I'm not sure it's personal growth, but you see what I'm getting at, that there are these benefits that we're reaching for that naturism has to offer.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just amazing to hear.
Yeah. And even though we would all love to live in a world, well, all of us who have tried naturism would love to live in a world where, naturism was the norm. Um, I don't see that being an aspect anytime soon, and or a benefit. But I think if there it was talked about more and it was discussed more openly, and people knew the benefits of naturism, and they were given that option to try something that could, benefit them, help them heal, help them, grow through naturism. I think it could be used throughout all of mental health. Like, I mean, if
Yeah.
we had more tools that weren't medication that could help people, because so many people are looking for, a medicine fix. And I think if we had more options, that there would be a lot more people treating their mental health more seriously.
Yeah.
And I really think that people need that.
Yeah. I've been thinking to myself the last few minutes, I wonder, wouldn't it be crazy if naturism ended up being prescribed as a treatment for some things? That would be nuts. And we have seen nudity
Yeah.
prescribed for things like in the 19 teens, 1920s, I forget, but there were some French doctors, at least one, who would prescribe nakedness as a way of treating certain things. There was a skin disease he was looking at. I forget what exactly it was. But at least you used to lay people out on hospital beds in rows out in this field next to the hospital. It was incredible.
I love that. I mean, I would totally sign up for that.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
It does.
It's
Like,
people could tell that
I
it
think,
was,
yeah, I think the medical benefits also are, are extraordinary too. Like, I
yeah,
mean, mental health, medical, social, like you're talking about, you're hitting a lot of different things that naturism can benefit so many people. And you can take it all collectively as a whole and have, an experience that you likely will never have anywhere else. And grow and prosper from that. And I can't see that. I can't see a negative side to that.
yeah.
It's very hard to look at it um, through the facts and see anything but the positive aspects.
Through the facts and also the fact that you've seen it with your own two eyes now.
Yes,
You've
personal
walked through it with
experience.
your own 2 feet. When I went to a naturist resort for the first time in 2017, I told my wife before I left, and she was cool with me going. That was a whole thing, but whole other story. But when we finally got down to it, she said, "Okay, now you can go." I told her I have to see for myself because I've been reading about it for 5 years at that point. I told her,
Wow.
yeah, I have to know if what these people are saying is true. Is it really possible? Is it actually beneficial? And so I decided I'm just going to go see for myself. And so now, like you were just saying, it's the facts and it's now experience. It's going to be really hard for somebody to tell you, convince you that you going to Oak Lake Trails is extremely dangerous and wrong, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to set up bad relationships with people. And it's like, yeah, but I made a bunch of awesome friends and the relationships are really like, healthy and I'm doing
Yes.
really well. How are you going to tell me that this is bad? Like, there's a whole other layer there now.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes we take the overall picture and we try to put it into words, or we try to put it into, explanations, or we try to share our story with others. And each individual story, regardless of what walk of life you take, is going to be different. And I know for me, this is what mine's look like. And that's why I think sharing it on Twitter and really talking about it, whether it's through, podcasts or YouTube channel, or just discussing it in society, discussing it, in social aspects, I think it's going to end up helping someone. Like, it's going to end up assisting someone in finding either who they are, or working on their mental health or their physical health, or whatever the case may be. I think there's so many benefits that if you're struggling with something throughout life and you decide that, this isn't working or this isn't helping, and you're struggling to find something that does, thinking kind of outside the box a little bit will really kind of help you open up your eyes and your mind and really see that there's a different path. There doesn't have to be, a cookie cutter for everyone. And we each have to create our own path and way of doing things. And I think that naturism can really help a lot of people be able to have those alternative methods that aren't like everyone else's. And each individual is going to have a different experience. And the more we talk about those experiences and the more that we share, I think it's going to help.
Yeah. That's one of my, well, again, like there's so many cool things to talk about. But this thing you're saying about cookie cutter solutions, people are very, very diverse and very different from one another. So the idea that we would have just like three or four or five things that we're going to assign to this problem is like, well, there's a lot of different kinds of people who have such and such problem, and the problem can be very varied as well.
Yes.
Something you mentioned a little while ago has been rattling around my brain a little bit. You mentioned about barely feeling comfortable going to Walmart. It reminded me of a Twitter post that you made a while back about um, this phenomenon where women go to like the restroom in pairs or groups. And there's a whole joke with men, by the way. You've probably heard this before, that men debate. They get in their circles of other men. Okay, but what? There's five of them. What do you think they're doing in there? And like so. But that post, maybe we can overlay that on the screen or something. I don't know, but it was phenomenal. Would you mind just talking about that, this phenomenon of women going to restrooms in groups versus comparing it to naturism?
Okay, so um, I believe the post ran along the lines of, gaggles of girls going to restroom together is commonplace, in the textile community. We do go in pairs, we do go in groups because there's such a threat of going anywhere alone. Like, you look at national statistics, you look at advisory boards, and they'll tell you, don't walk alone, don't run alone, don't do this, don't do that. They want people to travel in groups or pairs because of the danger in being alone, for women especially, and for that to spill over into all aspects of life is not unheard of. Like you don't go, out to a bar alone. You don't go to Walmart alone. You've got when you're traveling with your children. Rarely do you see women, especially single women, traveling alone with their children. They usually take another person, a family member, a husband, boyfriend. You have those other aspects because you're taught from a very young age. No, no, sir. We're taught through puberty, especially. You never go anywhere alone. You never travel alone. As kids, when you're really young, you're like, hey, stay with your brother, stay with your sister, stay with your cousin. You guys don't walk alone. You don't go outside at night. We're taught these from very, very young. So especially as being teenage girls or into our early 20s, like when you go to the bathroom, I mean, I'm 34 and we still, when one of us gets up to go to the bathroom at a restaurant, we're like, hey, are you going to the bathroom? Hey, I'm going with. Hey, do you want me to go with you? And it doesn't matter if we necessarily feel that there's a threat, an imminent threat or not. It's a constant practice to where even as adults, we're still not going to the bathroom alone. And it's kind of one of those things that's almost ingrained in us culturally that it's not safe. And so we just don't do it. And those of us who have grown up and who do feel like it's safe to go places alone, by golly George, you are blessed. But it's an aspect that, we're taught that from so young that we don't even think twice about it. We don't see it as another freedom that has been stripped away from us by society. We don't see it as, that we are being threatened as, especially women, that you can't do those things. Something that's totally normal and that men don't think twice about. And then they make jokes because they're like, we don't understand. And it is an ongoing joke, and I do find it funny. But at the same time, I don't find it funny because it's not something to joke about whenever someone's life is threatened and at risk on such a continuous basis, or a certain person, whether you were born as a woman or you transition to a woman, you don't feel safe to go places alone.
Yeah.
That's a freedom that all of us should have and that we should be born with. And we should never as a society sit down and accept the fact that we can't go to the bathroom on our own because we have a vagina. Like, that's not okay. And instead of correcting the behavior and the problem, we are told that as women, you have to travel in groups, and you can't go alone, and you can't do the things
Wear a
that.
sweater.
Mhm. And you have to wear more clothes, and you have to cover more of your body, and you have to do this and you have to do that to keep yourself safe. And we're not correcting that behavior with men, making sure that we feel safe. And so it's kind of snowballed. The snowball effect has gone way way out of control. And so whenever I did so I took a close friend of mine that we always go everywhere together whenever we are out in public, whenever we travel. Um, we stop at a gas station to go pee. We're both going pee,
Mhm.
and we stop at to run into Dollar General. We go together in Dollar General, and it's not necessarily a codependent thing. It's I don't feel safe going in alone. I don't feel safe going to the bathroom alone. I don't feel safe going into the gas station alone. I don't feel safe getting out and pumping my gas alone.
Yeah.
And so we do these things to keep ourselves safe because it's what we've been ingrained to do. But when we went to a nudist resort together, it was her first time going. It was my fourth time going. And I didn't recognize it until she had said something about it. And the bathrooms were back behind a couple buildings. It was another separate bathroom building, and there was outside showers on one side, bathrooms on the opposite. And neither one of us, I showed her where they are the first time we had gotten there. Neither one of us thought twice about going to the bathroom alone, by ourselves, back behind buildings, off in another direction, where you more than likely will not be heard if you were screaming. But the amount of comfort and safety we felt there, we never felt threatened. We never felt gawked at. We never felt stared at. We never felt looked at in any kind of sexual manner. We always felt safe. And since there wasn't that feeling of a threat involved, then we did not even think about it. We went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like when we went to walk to back to our cabin that we had gotten, or when we were coming back, we never thought twice about going by ourselves. Like, we never felt that fear or that need to have a companion with us. And it's something that you don't even realize you're taking for granted until you're placed in that kind of situation. And it's sad that we're at that place in the general society that we don't feel safe going into Target alone. And there's a reason that we don't feel safe going to Target alone. There's a reason we don't feel safe walking into a bar by ourselves or going for a walk through the park, or there's a reason that we fear being alone in public. um, and that fear is very real.
Yeah.
And you've seen across the United States so many times where women were kidnapped while they were out on a run on their own. In fact, one happened recently here the past couple of years, and she went on a run like she always did after work and after her personal training, and she was stalked, hit by a truck, killed. Took them quite a while,
Mm.
and it's one of those things that where it's a very imminent fear. It's very real, and it happens constantly.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't go do those things on our own. And to have that just dissipate in a certain environment it's unreal.
Sounds life-changing.
It really is. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is. To
I've
find that
tried.
level of trust and security within people that are complete strangers
Yeah.
is it speaks volumes for the environment.
Yeah. I've tried to help men understand the gaggle thing. I told him,
Mhm.
imagine if half of Americans were head and shoulders taller than you, outweighed you, were way stronger than you, way more violent than you, and you couldn't tell which ones wanted to rape you just by looking at them. And then you go into a restaurant, and half the guys in there are these huge hulking monsters, and you don't know which ones are out to get you. Do you want to go in there by yourself? Probably not. But
Yes.
I'm 6'2", 210 pounds. Most men don't want to fight me just because not that I know how to fight all that well, but chances are I'm going down swinging. Okay, so people think twice about getting physical with me. My wife is 5'8". She weighs maybe 140 pounds. Uh, it would be very easy for me to just pick her up and throw her out of a window. People don't realize that men forget how strong they are. Some women forget how strong men are. We can just do whatever we want to you guys sometimes, and many men do. And so it's a very, very real fear. It's like the Incredible Hulk is walking around out here. And
Yes.
so hearing stories of naturist women going into these places, it sounds absolutely bonkers. That
Hmm.
what do you mean everybody's naked and it's safer? But it is.
Yes. And somebody had told me not too long ago, they were like, "Well, how do you know it's safe? Like, how do you feel like it's safe?" It's the same way I can feel or sense, things aren't safe at a restaurant. Like I can feel the tension, I can feel the palpable energy, I can feel that someone is not in their right state of mind, whether it's anger or aggression or predatory. You can
Eyes,
feel
body
just like,
language.
yeah, yeah, body language, the tone of voice, the way that they approach or don't approach you, the way they're, um, manipulating any kind of situation. Like it's the things that us as women we're trained to watch for and to be more observant of or to be on guard from. Like you walk into a nature resort and you're almost hyper vigilant. You're like, uh-oh, is there any danger? Is there, because you're naked, you're more vulnerable. And so you're almost more sensitive if things aren't okay, if things aren't on the up and up, if things are threatening in any way, like you are more sensitive to it because you're in a state of higher vulnerability.
Yeah.
And for us to be in a higher state of vulnerability and still feel that safe, again, it speaks volumes. Like it's unheard of. You just don't you think it's going to be the complete opposite. You think that from being in that high state of vulnerability that you know, that you're going to want to leave that situation. You're going to want to get away from it. You're going to want to, but it kind of gives you this more it gives you a stronger sense of person that you're able to pick up on things, that you're able to process and deal with and know how to handle those kind of things because you feel confident and secure that you're not going to be preyed upon, that you're not going to be harmed, hurt, or placed in harm's way by someone else in those places, because it keeps, like, again and again, I've gone back, to four different trips, and I've never been in any kind of state where I felt like I was being threatened or was going to be harmed in any way.
Yeah.
And that's very unique to naturism because I don't walk around feeling like that. If I walk into a bar or a nightclub or a restaurant or Walmart or Target, like when you're around that many different people, you are very sensitive and you kind of feel that danger approaching, um, and you can kind of get ahead of it sometimes, and sometimes it'll kind of pop up out of nowhere. And I've never had either occur at a naturist resort, and I've been so fortunate to spend those times healing and recovering from the damage that's been done by those of the outside community and those of the textile community, that I've spent time in naturist resorts and nudist resorts that allow me that space to heal from that and to gain a better level of trust for people around me, because it was diminished. It was non-existent. And now that I do, but I also trust myself more, and I trust the decisions I'm making, and I trust my instincts better. I don't question whenever I feel, out of place, or whenever I feel like there's an immediate threat or danger. I don't question myself anymore. I don't say, "Oh, you're overreacting, you're overthinking, you're not paying attention, or that just come out of nowhere." That's it. No, I immediately look and see where that feeling's coming from. I don't second guess myself,
Yeah.
and I handle it appropriately because I have that confidence now. And there's been so many times where I've said, "Oh no, it's no big deal. It's nothing. It's just it'll be fine." And because that's the way society teaches us to be, like, "Oh well, you're overreacting constantly, or you're you're not processing that properly, or you no, they're really not a threat. They're harmless. They're harmless. They're harmless. I've heard that so many times. And then when you are placed in a situation, people tend to be like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, or you're making a big deal out of things, or, and so it chips away at your confidence on what's going on and how you're handling it. But I kind of regained that ability to have confidence in myself and my decisions, with practicing naturism, because now I'm like, no, I'm very confident in how I'm feeling about the situation. I know exactly what I'm going to do and how to proceed from here. It's given me that level of confidence I never had before to kind of stand up for myself and to make sure that what I'm doing is properly processing and handling my situations that are around me, because we're all placed in odd situations or different situations or situations that we're not sure how to handle as we go through life. That's how we build life experiences. And if from a young age we're taught how to deal with something in a certain way and it's not working, then we've got to change course, and we've got to learn things in a different approach. Because I remember from being very young, it was, you get away from the person that you feel threatened by, you get away from the person that, you feel like is dangerous. And, as women, it's placed on us to get away from the situation and to ignore the situation, not talk about it, and not say anything, and just leave.
Yeah.
That flee that we were taught continuously.
Flee,
And
hide, keep your head down, mouth shut.
yes. And you don't rock the boat, you get out of it. And so it's that mentality that we're raised with, that's kind of placed all of us in a much more vulnerable, much more victimized state than men. And since we do, get victimized so frequently, it's how do you change that aspect? How do you undo that damage? How do you fix those things and learn and be, and teach others how to defend themselves or how to handle that situation as they come. And I think that naturism has really taught me quite a bit about how to handle it, and without having to put me in that situation, because Lord knows we don't want to be put in that situation. We don't want to have to deal with defending ourselves or standing up for ourselves or saying something aggressive or rude or stern toward anybody else, because we're taught that's fuel to the fire, that's more provoking, and then it's your fault. And so since that same idea is being continuously reiterated in young girls, then when we grow up, we don't say anything.
Yeah.
And we don't, they say 9 out of 10 women have been sexually victimized at one point in their life or another. Those same words are reiterated with, but we don't have statistics and we don't have enough people reporting when they are victimized, that we don't even have real numbers for it. And it's like a quarter of a percentage of a percentage of a percentage that is even reported. And so it's so important to teach our women, our girls, our men in the same way to respect boundaries, to respect other people as a whole. That people don't earn respect, you give that person respect. Like, regardless of their behavior, your behavior needs to reflect, respect and boundaries. And, even when someone crosses my boundaries, be it physical or otherwise, I immediately, I hate to say defend myself, but I reiterate those boundaries. Hey, this is not okay. I'm not going to tolerate that kind of behavior. And, there are moments where you have to be more assertive with that, but I don't think you shouldn't have to repeat it. You shouldn't have to be assertive.
Yeah. You shouldn't have to say that in the first place.
Yes. It shouldn't have to be said out loud to begin with. And that's a hard one, because I know a lot of women, they struggle with the reinforcement side of boundaries, because we're taught to pretty much lay down and play dead and get away from the situation and flee. And we're taught those things, that we're not taught how to reinforce our boundaries once we place them. And I went to therapy for an entire year trying to navigate and learn how to do that, just because I was not taught. Um, and what I was taught, it was pretty much to get away from the situation. And so that's not reinforcing boundaries. And reinforcing boundaries can look very different to other people um, when they're not having to be in those situations. And I think for myself, I'm a very social person. I love to be social. I like to go to festivals and I like to go to concerts and I like to join groups and be a volunteer for things. And so I love to be social. So for me, not knowing from a young age how to have boundaries, reinforce boundaries, and constantly just avoid situations, um, it placed me in a very avoidant state of being in relationships, in all different kinds of relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, whatever the case may be. And the more we avoid and the more that we try to steer clear of the danger, the worse it is on our mental health, our physical well-being.
Mm.
It places us in situations where bad things do happen. And I think that in naturism, you're not only taught how to place those boundaries and how to reinforce those boundaries, but there's so many people in naturism that will respect your boundaries.
Yes.
That it kind of teaches the women, it teaches the men also how to not only respect others and their boundaries, but how to respect themselves and their boundaries, how to place proper and healthy boundaries. Um, and that's something that as a whole, as an entire United States, we're not very good at that.
Mm.
And we're not very good at respecting other people's boundaries. And so whenever you do see that continual cycle, and then you see the naturist, reaction to not only women and their boundaries, but men respecting their boundaries, and men having boundaries, and women respecting those boundaries. You see such a mutual respect and love and care that it starts spilling over into your personal life outside of naturist resorts. And whenever you see that spillage, you're starting to teach others, and then you're starting to point it out to men. Hey, that's an unhealthy behavior. Hey,
Mm.
that's not okay with me. Um, the more that they get that, the more that we are exposing the outside world to our healthy processes and practices. It's going to benefit people. So even though you might not agree with or practice naturism, you're likely going to see the benefits if someone in your life is practicing naturism. You're going to see benefits from people who are new to naturism because they're going to be learning too. And it's a hard thing to learn, but it's essential. It's essential in society right now because we
Yeah.
don't have it.
We need these boundaries.
Yes,
Totally.
we need to be learning.
So we're just about to wrap up this interview. This has been amazing. But we just got a couple more things and we'll be done. And so one of those is this is phrased as a yes or no question, and I'm not sure how to phrase it as not a yes or no question. But just knowing that going in, it's not supposed to be yes or no, but it's phrased that way. Would you recommend other women try naturism, and if so, why?
Yes, definitely. I think that we've kind of covered some of the reasons why already, but you know, body image is something that women struggle with because I think women's bodies change more drastically and more often than our male counterparts.
I agree.
We go through a lot more body changes, of course, because we grow humans, and we also go through a lot of body changes because our chemical composition is totally different, and we go through a lot more ups, downs, and sideways than men usually face. And so, with all of those changes, it's really hard for us to find love, acceptance, and appreciation for who we are in our bodies. Um, I think that naturism can be a drastic component of loving ourselves, who we are, and what we look like. Um, whenever it's practiced, we have a big plastic surgery culture, and when we don't love and accept who we are, we have it cut and we have it fixed. You don't see plastic surgery in men nearly, not even close to as much as women, because women struggle a lot more with our bodies and the way we look. and we have a certain level of expectation in society on how we should look. So, in that, we have turned to plastic surgery to fix the way we look instead of internally fixing the way we look at ourselves. And I think that when you add those aspects together, you're looking at a lot of women, thousands, maybe millions, that struggle with how they see themselves, and plastic surgery doesn't fix that. Tummy tucks don't fix that. Breast augmentation does not fix that. And so the way we see ourselves is so drastically important. Try naturism. Start seeing yourself naked. Let other people see you naked, because we all love and accept each other exactly as we are. And accepting ourselves is the hardest component.
Yeah.
And when we see other people love and care about us, regardless of what we look like, regardless of what our clothes look like or how expensive they are, or what we're driving, whenever we see that love and acceptance for each other, and we learn to accept ourselves, it changes who we are. Like, it changes how we see others. It changes how we see our children and how much we love and accept the people around us. And I think that it's going to be life altering to try naturism for women. And it's going to help benefit in so many different ways and so many different components that I would love to see women try naturism. Love it. I think the benefits outweigh the risk drastically.
And research. Definitely research.
Watch all the YouTube videos.
Yeah. I got on my phone a second ago, and I know that's rude, but I had to type down something that you said. It was something like, women are turning to plastic surgery to fix how they look, when we should be turning within to fix how we look at ourselves. That was a mic drop line. It was amazing.
It was just floating around in my head.
So
it comes out that way sometimes. Like, those mic drop moments, they just kind of fall out of your mouth. But yeah, it's
whenever that happens to me, I have to write it down or I'm going to forget it. So
right.
I thought I might forget what you said. Yeah. So
it's true though. Like, we all, even men, like, y'all struggle with your body image and the way you see yourself, and a lot of times it's, and most therapists can tell you this. It's the way you see who you are in the mirror, not necessarily how everyone else sees you. That, because we're not in everybody else's head, we're in our own. And we carry around, the words of others, and that impacts how we see ourselves a lot. But again, if we put those down, if we set those aside and we start looking at, ourselves exactly as we are, those words just kind of disappear. We don't have to carry those burdens and those thoughts and those opinions of everyone else with us. Like, we can just let that go. But again, it takes loving and accepting you as you are, naked.
Yeah. I've heard that a couple of times recently, of women getting into naturism or not getting into naturism, but just having that moment of taking everything off in front of the mirror. And I think this is true of guys too. It's definitely been true of me.
Mm-hmm.
Taking everything off and really just looking at yourself in the mirror for what you really are, what you really look like.
Yes.
And then learning to have that moment of, oh, I don't look terrible. Because there's that assumption that so many people, especially women are almost terrified of seeing themselves in the mirror because they think they're going to hate what they see, or they do already hate what they see.
Yes.
But being open to yourself like that and accepting yourself is very powerful and beneficial.
It really is. And I think it's really important to take that time to really get to know who you are. And I think if we teach our kids that at a young age, really look at yourself and who you are, who you want to be on the inside, it will directly reflect on how much you love and accept and you care about yourself on the outside. Because a lot of our kids, they're going through a lot of mental health battles. They're going through bullying. They're going through being judged or criticized or ridiculed by our peers. And a lot of times it's because their peers are criticizing themselves in front of them. It's not necessarily that they're being criticized by their peers, but they're watching how their peers see themselves and how their peers treat themselves. and how their peers talk about themselves. And that's reflecting on how they see themselves, because I heard a young girl the other day, she was telling me that her peers, especially in cheerleading, were talking about the number on the scale and how this one gained a pound, or how this one said she all of a sudden noticed that her arm was jiggling and she's got to get more in the gym. And, and then all of a sudden she's looking at herself in the mirror saying, oh my gosh, did I gain a pound? Oh my gosh, are my arms jiggling? Do I look like that? And can I pinch the fat on my ribs? And it was a spiral into oh my gosh, is that what other people are looking at? Oh my gosh, is that what other people see? And it's like that because whenever we're negative toward our appearance in front of others, and when we're negative toward our appearance in front of our children, that directly reflects on how they see themselves. And correcting that is really crucial for parents, because how we see ourselves is how our children are going to look at themselves too. And how much we hate on or bully or criticize or talk down to the way we are and the way we look is going to be how our kids talk down to themselves and how our kids see themselves. And I think that should be a harsh enough reality for parents that this is a behavior that has to be corrected. Yeah. And I think it'll directly reflect a lot in our children and how they see themselves, and also the encouragement that they're going to show others, because just like how it affected that girl that was watching that other child bully herself, they're going to see the kids that aren't doing that. They're going to see the kids that are loving their body and how they look, and the things that change them accepting and loving that. They're going to notice that more than they are the bullying. And so if we can create that culture in our children, then we can potentially fix a lot of the issues as they grow up.
That's great. Kids need to hear that a lot. We watched a movie with my sons recently. It was how to eat fried worms, and in that movie, the main bully, you find out at a certain point in the film, he's a bully because he's being abused at home. Yes. And it was just a big teaching moment. Pause the movie. All right, boys, this is usually how it is, that hurting people hurt people. If someone's being mean to you, stop and ask yourself what this person is going through right now that's causing this level of toxicity. Well, something I've been saying to people a lot lately is any stop to this conversation will feel like an interruption. And I think that's true in this case. It's been a joy talking to you today, Sarah. Before we go, people can connect with you on Twitter, right?
Yes, at Just Naked Sarah. It's spelled a little bit differently. Yeah, I'm sure you'll have it linked. But at JUSTNEKIDSARAH, because all good Sarahs have an H at the end. But
it's the Bible Belt way of saying naked. It's naked.
Naked. It's a very Arkansan way of saying naked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes, that's where you can find me. And I love to hear from people. I love to be able to connect with people, so you can follow me there and kind of watch my journey and all the things. And I'll be posting this interview to my Just Naked Sarah Twitter. So
awesome. Well, hey, great talking to you. Have a good day.
Yes, it was great to talk to you too. Bye, hon.
Well, there you have it. That's our interview with Just Naked Sarah. If you'd like to follow Sarah's message on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can find her at Just Naked Sarah on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. X. I can English. I truly do. I can. It's a thing. It's a language. You can find her on X as Just Naked Sarah. And you'll notice that naked is spelled naked because we are in the South. Here in the South, people often say naked, which is a way more fun way of saying naked, honestly. My hope is to keep these interviews flowing as the channel progresses over time. I realize that I'm pretty sure I'm making good points here, otherwise I wouldn't be running my mouth like this. I think that what I have to say is worth something, or I wouldn't be saying it again. But I also understand I'm not the only kind of person in naturism. There are other voices out here that need to be a part of this discussion. So I want to try to bring in other kinds of voices. And right now, the most important distinction to me in naturism is the male-female divide. That's the most important distinction I can find in naturism right now. Maybe that'll change in the future. Maybe I'll move on to some other distinction in naturism, with different kinds of people. But right now, the most important one to me is male and female. So those are the voices I'm trying to get on the channel right now. I'm reaching out to women naturists. If you know women who could be interviewed for this, would like to be interviewed for this, by all means, set that up with me and her in the link tree down below. I have Instagram, X, Facebook, all kinds of social media. Not all kinds, but lots of kinds. Reach out to me, send me a direct message, and get us all linked in together. And maybe we can do an interview. Love to do more interviews. Now, before we go, I do have that urgent message for the naturist community. In case you don't already know, following the interview, Sarah has been taken to court for being a naturist. Yes, you heard that right. She's being taken to court because she is a nudist. People are alleging that her being a naturist is evidence that she has some kind of moral or mental ineptitude, which disqualifies her from being a legal guardian of a child, which is, if I seem mad, it's because I am, but it just seems like insanity to me that this is a reason people would give for taking someone's kids. In response, Bill and Nisi from Love the Skin You're In podcast and the naturist community in general have started a GoFundMe campaign to help Sarah with her legal battle. As of this recording, the GoFundMe for Sarah has reached $13,600 already. They went up several thousand just in the first day. It was incredible. I've already donated. Cypress Cove has donated. Please consider giving something, even a little bit, to this GoFundMe, to this campaign, because every little bit counts. And the extra stuff not needed for Sarah's own case will get rolled over into other people's cases in the future by AANR or ANR. You can find the link to Sarah's GoFundMe in the description down below. We in the naturist community need to stand together. If naturism is going to become more mainstream, then there is a wall of court cases between us and that reality. That's just a fact here in the States. We have got to push through this hardship. We've got to get through that to get to the other side. A lot of other social issues have had to go through court in order to be changed in this country. We've seen that with lots of different issues. A bunch of issues are probably popping into your head right now. The courts have a lot of power in this country. If we can get this to work, if we can get this more mainstream, if we make it more mainstream, then we have a better chance in court. Once we get this through court, we have a better chance at legislation. Once we have legislation, then we can have protection as naturists in this country to not have to wear all the ridiculous get-ups that people want us to wear to appear in public. Because for some reason in this culture, being human is not good enough for people. But what if it was? This is how we get there. Right now, this court case reflects the attitude of the American people. Unfortunately, there are enough of that kind of person out there that this is the reality in court. So let's help Sarah, let's help other naturists, and let's make naturism mainstream. No, let's not make naturism mandatory. Let's make it mainstream. I mean, people like baseball. Not everyone likes baseball or plays baseball. But baseball is, mainstream. Whatever, dude, you like baseball. Let's do that with naturism. Huge thanks to Sarah, obviously, for doing the interview. It means a lot to me that you came on the channel. I loved our conversation. Hopefully we can talk about other stuff in the future, on or off the channel. You seem like a really nice person. Well, following when I found out about all this court stuff, I reached out to Sarah and asked her, hey, just in case, do you want me to keep the lid on this interview, for the foreseeable future? She said, no, by all means, go ahead and upload it. Okay, so here it is. The interview is here. The GoFundMe is in the description down below. That's it for this video. I will see you in the next one.